Good evening, everybody. The deadline for sequestration has already moved till sometime Friday when the president will sign the order. Now it adds another day to the president's campaign of fear on the impact of a potential sequester. And the president's personal political organization, Organizing for America, are fanning out across the country to dozens of cities and spreading his message of fear and despair. The Obama supporters, certainly the unions, have moved a long way from the themes of hope and change, haven't they? Well, today, the head of the National Air Traffic Controllers Association predicted that major hubs in Chicago and Houston would be forced to shut down runways and towers, resulting in fewer flights, perhaps a third fewer flights at major airports. The union warning of significant delays, possible safety hazards, including the limiting of landing options during bad weather, all because of the sequester. Union President Paul Rinaldi said, quote, "If they proceed, these indiscriminate cuts will ultimately result in fewer flights and increased delays, creating a ripple effect that will hurt airlines and pilots, flight attendants, private aviators, airport employees, passengers, and the many businesses, large and small, that depend on a vibrant aviation sector to survive and thrive." That would be the result of the slow reduction of some $44 billion in federal spending, according to the president and the scaremongers amongst everything from the Organizing for Action to the unions to the president's surrogates, as I said, fanning out across the country. All of this adds to the number of threats coming from within the president's own cabinet.
Kids are going to get hurt. Kids are going to get hurt. That's just the reality.
There are things that we will not be able to do as well, like secure between the ports of entry on the land borders.
There is going to be pain, and the American people are going to be less safe.
Cuts to budgets mean preventative maintenance and quick repair of runway equipment might not be possible.
The Obama campaign of fear on the issue of the sequestration has become almost farcical. Immigration's and custom enforcement claims potential budget cuts mandated by the sequester prompted their release of some 300 inmates in Arizona alone Saturday, and perhaps more later. ICE claiming that those releases are non-violent offenders who are being monitored in a less expensive manner. Pinal County Sheriff Paul Babu disagrees, saying the inmates released in his county are violent. He fears they will commit more crimes and then disappear.
This idea of supervised release is laughable. These are all people who are multiple border crossers. They could never stop them crossing an international border. How on earth are they going to provide supervised release and supervision over these criminals?
The White House now trying to distance themselves from the Department of Homeland Security, putting the blame for the decision to release those detained illegal immigrants squarely on ICE.
This was a decision made by career officials at ICE without any input from the White House as a result of fiscal uncertainty over the continuing resolution as well as possible sequestration.
Senior aides at the Department of Homeland Security headquarters in Washington also claimed they had no knowledge of the decision until after it was made. And in a time when a countervailing political force in Washington is badly needed, the Republican Party seems enfeebled, sometimes lost, and directionless. This is what happened in the Senate today. Republican Senators Pat Toomey of Pennsylvania and Bob Corker of Tennessee, they decided to offer a plan that would put the responsibility on President Obama to cut federal spending, a political gambit, if you will. Their measure would require $85 billion still be cut, but would make the president responsible for that cut and give him the leeway to choose specifically which cuts. But the Republican Senate caucus is a House divided on the plan. Minority Leader Mitch McConnell saying some members apparently fear the president would use his newfound flexibility to, of all things, play politics.
There are some members of our conference who are suspicious that the administration, taking advantage of such flexibility, would seek to punish their political enemies.
Perish the thought. Well, a Texas high school student is suing her school after being punished for refusing to salute and to recite the Pledge of Allegiance, the Mexican Pledge of Allegiance. 15-year-old Brenda Brinston says she was given a failing grade by her teacher, who ordered her students to recite the Mexican pledge as part of a Spanish class assignment. The federal lawsuit says Brinston offered to recite the American Pledge of Allegiance in Spanish, but her teacher refused her request. Ironically, the girls' school district, the McAllen Independent District, has a policy that prohibits schools from ordering students to recite, that's right, the American Pledge of Allegiance. Well, the Senate just moments ago voted to confirm Jacob Lew as the new Secretary of the Treasury. The former White House Chief of Staff winning confirmation by a margin of 71 to 26. Unclear at this hour is when he will be sworn in. Newly confirmed Secretary of Defense Chuck Hagel was sworn into office earlier today. Hagel winning confirmation yesterday after losing a Senate cloture vote 2 weeks ago and undergoing days upon days of harsh criticism and questions from within his own party. Well, our first guest tonight says President Obama and Senate Democrats need to follow and not misinterpret the law of what sequestration is, to cut spending, not to raise taxes. Joining us now is Senator John Barrasso. He's Republican Policy Committee Chairman, a member of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. Senator, good to have you with us.
Thanks for having me, Lou.
Sequestration, we have a new deadline. It's whenever the president signs the order, putting it into effect. Your thoughts?
Well, I see it the same way you do. The president seems to be running a campaign of fear. The purpose behind it, of course, is to try to scare Congress and the American people into raising taxes. I'm just not buying it. We need to cut wasteful Washington spending. The American people, and I've just been all around Wyoming last week, people believe that at least 50 cents of every dollar they send to Washington is wasted, is poorly used. People don't feel they're getting value for their money. And now you see what this administration is doing in terms of releasing illegal immigrant detainees. Arnie Duncan's statement on CBS last week about teachers getting pink slips, where we now know that is not true. There is so much fear-mongering on the part of this administration. They just have to realize it's time to cut the spending, and Republicans stand firm that we're not going to trade a spending cut for a tax increase.
You know, as I said at the beginning of tonight's broadcast, this has become almost farcical, this campaign of fear by this president, his cabinet, his administration, and those who support him, whether they are unions, whomever they may be, the Organization for Action. But the reality here is that today we're greeted by the spectacle of a divided Republican Party, because it appears that the Senate leadership has embraced this, what is described as a 5-page draft that would confer upon the president constitutional authority to make spending cut decisions, rather replacing sequestration. What are you all doing over there?
Well, we are unified that there is going to be spending cuts occurring, not an increase in taxes. The proposal by those two senators, and they're still working on the fine details of that, is for a temporary period till we can get back to the regular order here, like passing a budget. The Senate hasn't, the Democrat-controlled Senate has not passed a budget now, Lou, in 1,400 days. This is before you know, but they haven't passed a budget since the iPad has been around. And the amount of sequester, realistically, $85 billion, that's the amount of money, Lou, that we borrow as a country every month. And that's only the sequester for the whole year. And realistically, you know, when they call it a cut, spending continues to go up. It's just not going up in as fast a rate as the president wants it to go up.
You know, it turns out we're not talking about $85 billion, as we've all been discussing for the past 6 weeks. We're talking about, really, according to the Congressional Budget Office, in reality, a reduction of $44 billion in outlays in this fiscal year. So the margin is even smaller. This little sliver of a reduction in spending in this current fiscal year becomes even smaller, about 1%, not 2.3%. It's not going to have nearly that impact, and yet the horror stories go on. At what point do you, as a Republican and a leader of the United States Senate, say, you know, why don't I tell my colleagues, including Senator Corker, and I'm sorry, who's the other senator behind this 5-page draft?
I think it's Toomey and Inhofe for the two
Yeah. Why don't you tell those guys, calm down and let us have some leadership here, clear, articulate voices about the Republican view, because it really is mixing messages. It really is confounding, and it makes the Republicans look either frivolous because it's a political gambit, or perhaps even worse, seeking to avoid the responsibility that they said they wanted to claim, and that is to reduce spending and return to responsible, prudent fiscal policy in this country.
There should be no question about it. The spending cuts will occur on Friday. The sequester will go into place, and it realistically should not do all of this damage that the president continues to say is going to happen when you look at just how small it is and how long it takes to actually roll through the whole process. My concern, as is yours, is that the president has hyped it to such a degree that they may have to force some things in the most painful way on the American people, which a good manager, a good leader would try to rearrange in a way that would minimize the impact of the citizens of a country, not increase the pain on the citizens of a country. But Senator, I'm afraid that's what we're dealing with right now, Lou.
Well, right now, I got to say the American people have got to be just confounded by the farce that is the Obama administration's FAIR campaign, and by the conflicting, contradictory, and certainly mixed messages of the Republican leadership. But at a time when we need responsible, loyal opposition, I would put it that way. And Senator Barrasso, we're not going to have time, but I wanted to point out, Senator Barrasso and the Policy Committee have just come up with a report identifying just in 1 year, 2011, $115 billion in wasted money by the federal government. It goes across a variety of departments and programs. 115 billion, but no one seems too excited about that. We'll find out whether Senator Barrasso can get some people excited about it, because it's a lot of money, just about 3 times the impact of this so-called sequester. Senator Barrasso, as always, it's great to have you with us. We thank you so much.